Welcome to the Four Overcomers broadcast. The other day I spoke on who could find a virtuous woman, parentheses, seriously, who can? And I kind of want to pick up on that same theme. This is about men, why men should try to form their own tribes as far as getting together with others who will mentor you, who will lead you, who will reinforce your values. We've got to get away from this assault on men and how we have a tendency now to be on the defensive and how we're loners and we're trying to Spartan it out. And I don't think that that's the way to go. I feel sorry for three groups. I feel sorry for the young guys coming up that are coming up. Now I'm speaking of Western culture, okay, for this message. The young guys coming up are basically coming up in a matriarchal, feminist-led ideology of a culture. There's no doubt about it. Almost all the teachers are women. Men are constantly being beaten down. If they show too much energy, then the school nurse is going to tell them that they've got ADHD and this and that, and they're going to get put on the big pharma train. All of this is having consequences. I feel sorry for the young guys coming up who don't really know any better, because many of them raised by single parents or a broken home of some type, they don't have a good mentor. And you can see it. You can see it in our society. I met a guy in the gym recently, and he was working out. He had his girlfriend there, and I was talking to him and got into culture, and he said, my girlfriend basically makes me say that I'm a feminist. I said, are you a feminist? He said, well, we need to be fair, right? And women need their place at the table. And I said, but that's not what your girlfriend's getting at. She wants you to say that you're a feminist, and now you're going around saying that you're a feminist, and that's a beta male move. Your girlfriend's not going to stay with you just because of how submissive you are, because she may say that's what she wants, but women always chase what they say is toxic. At least they do it until they're about 30, 31, 32, and then they want the beta male to settle down with and take care of any kids that they've had and pay their bills and just give them security, and they still won't be happy with that beta male. They still want the bad boy, the so-called bad boy. So now masculinity is toxic according to Western culture. And I do feel sorry for these young guys coming up without proper mentorship, and they think that there is something wrong with them and that they need to, yes, say, I'm a feminist because my girlfriend demands that of me. And then the second group that I really feel sorry for are the young men and men, middle-aged, whatever, that totally get what's going on. They see how degenerate, how filthy and degenerate and backwards, even biology denying culture exists in the West. It is an abomination in the eyes of tradition. It's an abomination in the conscience of these men. They know that this is wrong, and they have to go around in incredible cognitive dissonance to carry on with this charade of a culture. And I can tell you it is certainly out of sorts with God and His Word. But I'm speaking to all men right now, so this isn't necessarily just to Christian men. Although I will say that in the Bible, God tells Job at the end of his trials and tribulations to stand up. He says, gird your loins, stand up like a man, and I will demand of thee, and you will give me answers. So obviously, we know that what's going on now is totally against how man has always lived, how societies have been. And I don't want to hear this business about Amazon societies. I'm talking about the greater, massive bulk of human history, everything that we know about human history, about societal relations, about the way civilizations advance. Men have their place, and women have their place. In the message the other day, I spoke about Proverbs 31, how a virtuous woman, she conducts business. She clothes herself with strength, with courage, and she takes care of things. Nobody's saying that the woman is to be weak or submissive. At least I'm not. I've just quoted Bible. But when we get to what's happening in this culture now, the men that know deep down that something is wrong, the reason why I feel sorry for them, because unlike the beta and the simps who are just giving into this and who are confused, both somewhat not their fault, but if they continue on, it is their fault. But these men that I'm speaking about in group number 2, they know that things aren't right. But they can't find in the West very many women that are somewhat traditional in the gender roles, or at least they can't find a woman that's trying to out-masculine, out-testosterone him. So what do? Well, many of them stay away from women, MGTOW, men going their own way. Go ahead and look on YouTube. Look on some of these video platforms. There are so many of these channels. There are so many platforms for men now going their own way. And it's a shame that it's gotten like that. It will hurt demographics. It will hurt having families. But you can't blame these men. They get their children ripped away from them in unfair divorce courts. That has been going on for at least 3 decades or more. They get alimony taken out from them, even palimony in some cases, where they were just living with somebody, but it was in their home. So men are left destitute after 15 years of industry, and then they have it all removed, even when the woman cheats on him in many cases. Go talk to any divorce lawyer and see if that's not the way that this sham of a culture is working it out on men right now. So, and there's men that are physically and psychologically abused. But yet, whenever the word abuse comes up, we always think of the stereotype that a woman's got a black eye and that her, bad man did it to her. And you can always find a guy who's going to white knight when a woman starts screaming and yelling in a cafe, a restaurant, a bar, or whatever. Men don't stick together. But now, there are men who are they are understanding it, and they are starting to talk about all these injustices through the court system, and they are starting to go their own way. The third group that I feel sorry for are the men that do understand what's going on, but again, have lost almost everything. They've lost time. Time is the most important element, not money. Time and health, right? But time is huge. And these men have lost their time in what they've produced. So the men that don't know any better, that are coming up because they're in these matriarchal-led societies in the West, the young men, especially the younger men, who get what's going on, they've tried to form a tribe. They've tried to get with other men who they can have some solidarity with and strengthen each other. And they're trying to find some good women out there, but they can't seem to do it. They can't seem to find traditional women. And traditional is a big word, so don't try to just pin it into some 1953 stereotype of a woman in a kitchen, okay? Again, I talked about Proverbs 31 the other day about the real definition for a virtuous woman. But nobody can deny that this is happening with the young men today. Look at the divorce rate. Look at the women that are not happy with the men that they demanded. They demanded beta males, but they're never happy with them. And women initiate cheating and divorces at probably a higher rate than the men do. That's the first time that that's ever really come about in our societies. Women are chasing the alpha males, the ones that they publicly declaim and say, defame rather, and say they're toxic and all this, but yet they chase them. and men can't understand it. So I feel sorry for these three groups of men: the young men that don't get it and aren't going to get it unless some other men get a hold of them, and the men that are trying to find those women and can't really in the West, and then the third group that have already been raked over the coals and lost years with their kids in very unfair court scenarios, and they've been betrayed. So I would just say this is a general message to men: don't try to be the uber Spartan. You need a network, and I actually despise that word network because it's weak. It's like the word appropriate. We need tribes, real tribes in our hyper-local communities where we live, and then we have a digital tribe where we go to some of these MGTOW type channels. Some of them are a little gritty, maybe too much for a Christian, but there are many of them that are just talking about traditional gender roles or sex roles, and it's just a shame what's happening, and more people need to call it out. And I want to say this too. In the modern evangelical church, I have talked about how weak, how absolutely morally weak these so-called pastors are and these preachers that pour out of these seminaries and Bible colleges, and they don't even believe the Word of God. How many of them talk about this very subject? How many of them talk about, they talk about marriage, but they are not dealing with modern marriage. You can't just keep talking and pushing couples into marriage to have kids if you're not going to deal with the reality of the way the marriages and the divorce courts and the custody courts are working this situation out. I never hear any preachers talking about this in its totality, in its reality, where the rubber really meets the road. So I do feel sorry for these men, and I'm trying to be much more communicative with young men in particular, not because I'm some uber mentor, but I know I have some wisdom and knowledge and understanding, and I can very well discern the weakness of our institutions, the weakness of the churches, the weakness of our leadership, and how men are just being beaten down. So be courageous, be outspoken, try to be fair-minded about the good women that are out there, but please form a tribe with other men before you become like that guy I met in the gym who said, yeah, well, I just have to play this game. My girlfriend makes me say that I'm a feminist. That's all I got. Take care.